Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Enterprise AI Unlocked, the podcast where we explore how AI is reshaping the modern enterprise, one decision, one workflow, and one agent at a time. I'm your host, Paul Brzozowski, part of the founding team at Olakai, the enterprise AI intelligence platform that helps organizations measure, govern, and scale their AI deployments. Today's episode takes us to the restaurant industry, one of the most challenging environments for deploying AI. Joining me is Justin Foster, co-founder and CRO at Incept AI. Justin was previously a CRO at Presto Automation, another tech firm in the restaurant AI space. And Incept just raised $3 million from Raleigh Ventures, led by Ben Fried, former CIO of Google, and claims up to 97% order completion accuracy without human intervention, a breakthrough in an industry where most systems max out at 83. Justin's serial founder, he co-founded LiveClicker in 2008 and sold it a decade later. He's building a company in a space where he's seen exactly what doesn't work. Justin, welcome to Enterprise AI Unlocked.
Well, it's great to be here with you. And I have to say, this is quite a meta experience. Got the podcaster and the podcaster over here.
It is indeed. I am always looking up to Justin. I have known Justin for more than a decade myself, and it is a bit of a surreal experience to be here with him. And I truly appreciate that, Justin. But hey, let's dive right in. So, Justin, you've said most voice AI systems hit 83% accuracy before needing human backup. Walk me through why that's the ceiling and what Incept is doing differently to break through it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So just to clarify for everyone the use case of what we're doing. So Incept AI makes a system that takes orders at noisy drive-throughs. And in the drive-through, when you think about the audio environment in those drive-throughs, it's very noisy and the audio quality is very bad, right? You've got people that are, giving their order in the car, and there's kids in the back seat that are yelling or screaming their order. You've got the radio on, there's cars that are driving past. You've got rain, honking horns and stuff like that, depending upon where the location is. And that audio environment, that soundstage, makes it very difficult for AI systems to correctly process speech. And that's really the big reason why the existing voice systems that are out in the market today rely so much on human intervention. It's not that voice AI systems aren't able to achieve a high degree of accuracy. The question is, how much of that accuracy can be achieved without requiring humans to take over in the cases where AI fails? And just for my time in industry, what I observed was the number one reason why these systems are not successful at processing orders is because of these audio issues. So that's really what we're focused on here at Incept AI.
Thank you. And I guess everyone can relate. We all probably been to those situations in an exactly noisy environment. The bottleneck seems to actually be the threefold. It's the audio quality coming in, the latency you introduce when humans have to jump in mid-conversation, and the models themselves are still catching up, right? That 83% ceiling makes sense now to me. You're basically fighting on multiple fronts. And I love what you're acknowledging in the models that are still evolving. We see this revolution while we go through the journey of AI. And today, obviously, I want to talk a little bit more about the journey of enterprise AI adoption, and your perspective will be very interesting. So thank you for this honest answer, and I can appreciate that indeed. I guess this leads me, Justin, perfectly into the origin story. Because you saw these limitations from your time in this space prior to co-founding Incept, let's talk a little bit more about starting Incept itself. You have some background in the restaurant voice AI space prior to it, but what made you decide to start this company?
Well, I think from my time in the industry prior to starting Incept, I observed this high degree of human intervention that was required in order to have orders processed successfully. And you mentioned, Paul, that in addition to when you have humans that are involved in processing orders, that creates latency in the drive-through and that hurts the guest experience. And when you think about quick service restaurants, latency is the enemy of throughput, and quick service is all about throughput. So you have models that are not able to process audio very well because the audio is so bad. You have latency, which leads to poor guest experience. But the third thing you have is when you have to involve humans in this process, you create challenges to scaling, and you also introduce costs. And anyone that spent any amount of time around the restaurant industry knows that restaurant operators operate on very thin margins. And the industry today, especially the lower end, is being super compressed by inflation wary consumers. And when you have voice AI systems that require a high amount of human intervention, that drives costs up for operators. That means operators can't adopt, and you don't really have any place to grow. So these are some of the challenges that I saw prior to joining my co-founder, Umut Isik, here at Incept. And just to be very clear, I am not the brains of the operation at Incept AI. Umut, his background is as a principal applied scientist. He was at AWS. He worked on this very problem that we're focused on here at Incept AI, processing bad drive-through audio back in 2019. So this is like pre-GPT-2, and like nothing really worked back then. And when Umut showed me what he and the team of scientists had built here at Incept, and he shared with me that we were able to achieve these high levels of accuracy in a completely autonomous system, meaning no human intervention involved whatsoever, my first reaction was BS, like, no way, man. But I heard it myself, and I knew that if this worked and it could scale, this would be the solution that would end up winning the industry. So one thing that I'm totally sure of is whether it's Incept or it's someone else that ends up winning the space, the approach that we're taking is the correct one.
I love that perspective. And I guess what you, between the lines, brought up is very particular KPIs. And as we work through that agentic revolution, I see this becoming a lot more important to understand at the get-go. Your story obviously resonates, and it's a very particular use case for restaurant drive-thrus. I love your analogy. Whomever takes the best precision and figures out those top KPIs will probably own the market. Hopefully that will be you guys, Justin. That's what I wish you indeed. But I can relate this somewhat with some of the POCs I've been running with my business partner, Xavier, at Olakai as well. We've been involved in a lot of AI voice agents, just more call center setups, whether it was sales, booking appointments. One of the key KPIs that had come up multiple times is something called deflection rate. And I trust that you might have something similar. That is all about AI completing the entire workflow without human intervention. I think that's the KPI that we might unravel a little bit more as we continue this conversation. So I appreciate that, Justin. That's actually quite interesting purview.
Yeah, we don't call it the deflection rate. We refer to it as the non-intervention rate. And it's exactly what you said, Paul. It's the percentage of interactions that the AI is able to complete autonomously without a human becoming involved. And that human could be either at the restaurant or it could be a human agent that's employed by Incept.
Right. You know, I'm just thinking about a bit of a prototype. Imagine that there is another voice agent that now needs to intervene. So you've just been passed from one agent to another, right? That's just a joke. I'm sure it would not work. Fair enough. No more spoiler alerts here. But let's talk a little bit more, Justin, about experimentation execution. You've been in the space for quite a while. And again, still early days of this show. We always work with the framework of 5 questions with our guests. The first question is, Justin, when deploying AI in production, what's been the biggest hurdle in turning early experimentation into measurable success?
I think the biggest hurdle is simply making sure that the system is reliable enough to scale. So in our case, we build voice agents, right? When we go into a new brand, think of like a Wendy's, Burger King, McDonald's, Starbucks, restaurant brands. Setting up that first restaurant is very difficult to have the deflection rate or the non-intervention rate be very high because there are a lot of weird edge cases about the ways that people order food. I was interviewing a guy on my podcast from Wendy's, and he was telling me there's something like 63 million different ways to customize a Wendy's hamburger. And, people just have these super weird requests. Like some people want a hollowed out bun, or there's different regional dialects where people will refer to food differently. Getting over those initial hurdles and figuring out what those edge cases are so that you can train the AI is very hard at the beginning. Now, I would say the second restaurant you stand up is 100 times easier than the first one. And the third one you stand up is 100 times easier than the second one. By the time you get to 5 restaurants, it really should just be a matter of snapping your fingers, pushing a button, and taking the restaurant live. I will say in our case, though, another big challenge is really a cultural challenge, or it's just an issue where people are not comfortable with technology, right? It just happens to be with any kind of technology. The older you get, the more stuck in your ways you get, the less open you are to trying new things. And we observe the same thing with voice AI in the drive-through, right? Older people tend to be less tolerant of voice agents. They're always the ones on the phone hitting 000 representative. And really the solution to that is naturalness of interaction. So that's another hindrance in our space, as it is with AI in general. Now, you've probably played around with ChatGPT's voice mode. It's crazy how good it is. I mean, the quality of speech and inflection and pronunciation and friendliness has gotten so good so quickly. Really, just this is over the last 12 months. It's gotten triple as good as it was, a year ago. So I think that is actually becoming less of a challenge for us right now, but you can still tell it's not quite all the way there yet. And those people that are sensitive to technological change are people that resist, and that makes it hard for us, obviously, to roll out.
I chuckled at some point when you said that a little bit older people are hitting the zeros. And believe me or not, but I must be a bit of a boomer myself because I have been hitting the zeros so many times myself. Maybe that was more of a technical performance issue on the provider side where my customer experiences wasn't it. But it sounds like your customers are really fighting three front wars. There is a bit of a technical performance still that we're still working through. Obviously, the customer experience, that's what we really strive to provide, especially in that type of business, right? And with, I don't really want to call it shrinking economy around us because that's not true, but just shrinking the disposable budgets that we often have nowadays, you really want that customer experience to be super high. And you mentioned business viability as well. But speaking of economics, Justin, let's talk a little bit of metrics. I'm a bit of repeating myself episode over episode. That is my favorite question. So I'm just going to punch it right here. If you had to pick, Justin, one metric to prove voice AI's value to a CFO, what would it be and why?
I'm going to pick 2. So the first one is labor efficiency, and the second is sales bump. At the end of the day, it's about lowering costs and growing revenues. That's all that really matters in any business. On the labor side, it's pretty tricky because lots of people are scared about AI coming to take their jobs. And it's incredibly important with this type of technology when it's deployed with, think about the people that are interacting with this technology, right? These are people that are working in fast food restaurants, okay? These are oftentimes minimum wage employees. A lot of them are quite financially strapped, and some people are fearful of this type of technology. So it's really important that this technology can improve the lives of the people that are working in the restaurant. It can make their jobs easier, can make them more efficient, can help them serve customers better. And that's the way you position there. Now, what we see is that, especially in busier locations where you might have someone that is full-time working, cashier, the window, doing nothing but taking orders, you can actually save some labor, and that is going to be important to the CFO, and that's also going to be important to the restaurant operator. The other piece that helps everyone is sales bump, right? So operators are all about driving incremental check size. A human order taker to drive through, they're trained with a script to sell you a combo, to make something large, to add an extra item, to add a dessert. But the percentage of orders where people are actually doing this is shockingly low. With AI, you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to feel weird about asking someone if they want a delicious brownie or if they want to make the fries large or if they want to have the sandwich be a medium or large instead of a small. It's just going to do it with friendliness and precision every single time. And in theory, if you do that every single time, you will drive higher check. And that, of course, is welcome news to struggling restaurants.
Again, very interesting insight. Even though we train people to follow script as business owners, we obviously rely on those additional items, cross-sell, upsell everywhere. It's just what makes or breaks sometimes our businesses. And it must be very frustrating for the business owner that can appreciate that when those things don't happen. But I guess your metrics speak to the CFO trifecta. What I mean by this is really all about revenue up, costs down, and ideally improved retention. I guess the reliability with the AI voice opportunity here, especially with the example you've provided, just makes a lot of sense. And I guess that's how you get your budget approved, right? If you can prove those metrics and then deliver the CFO agenda.
Yeah, just really quickly before we move on, the retention one I would say is it's a little bit of a tougher case to make, especially if we're looking at like staff retention. Staff retention is a real problem in the restaurant industry. It's one of the highest turnover, if not the highest turnover, labor forces in any industry. So there is definitely benefit there, but the hard, cost drop, revenue up, ultimately that's what's going to drive it for us.
Those are the two metrics. Thank you. Appreciate that. And hopefully the audience will recognize these as the top priorities. If you agree, disagree, let us know in the comments below. Truly appreciate the dialogue continuing. And these are another two metrics that we will add to our metric of fame board that is coming soon. Now, let's talk a little bit more about prioritization investment decisions. Justin, how do you decide what to build next, what to say no to?
I mean, we're a business. If we're going to be successful, we have to listen to our customers. So it really comes down to what are our customers asking us to do and figuring out the level of work that it's going to take to accomplish these customer requests and what is going to move the needle the most for the customer in driving non-intervention rate up, revenue up, labor costs down. So we really just listen to our customers. We've got a product roadmap with big Gantt charts and people that are assigned to different projects. And we try to make the smartest decisions to help us grow the fastest and help our customers succeed.
I think this is actually, in my opinion, the right answer. A couple of episodes ago, I had a CEO, SaaS executive as a guest. His answer was, it depends. However, there's one common delimiter here, Justin. This guest also brought up work backwards approach. He actually brought up a very famous Apple framework to explain why it depends at the end of the day. So I truly understand where you're coming from, because at the end of the day, as SaaS leaders, business leaders, enterprise AI leaders, at the end of the day, we will be guided by our customers or by our needs, right? So we have to be careful not to get distracted with too many features, and then having that discipline is the game changer. Personally, spent almost 2 decades in software sales myself. It's very tempting to say yes to everyone, especially your early customers, chase every lead, build every feature. We both know that it's all about being surgical, listening to your customers, and not let too many voices pull you in a different direction. So yeah. I really appreciate that.
Very deliberate about how quickly we're growing in our early stages, because it is very tempting, I think, for any new business to try to take on as many customers as possible. And I think what sometimes people forget are that customers are all different, right? And the more customers you take on, the more customer needs you'll have to fulfill, and the harder it's going to be with a small team without losing focus. In the restaurant space in particular, this industry is a little bit different than a lot of industries in that you could have one customer and you can go very, very, very deep into that one customer, right? So think about like a Wendy's or a McDonald's and how many thousands and thousands and thousands of restaurants Wendy's or McDonald's has. If you can do a great job for one McDonald's, one Wendy's, you can potentially unlock thousands of McDonald's or thousands of Wendy's. So it makes a lot of sense in our industry to go very deep with just a few customers to start so that you can expand that opportunity.
I like this analogy. I personally think this is very applicable on the wide horizon of businesses. Obviously, we won't be done jumping into too many details, but that really resonates with me, Justin. So I appreciate that extra color. Let's talk about governance, risks, and control in the AI space. I'm interested in, Justin, to know how do you think about governance when putting AI on the front lines of customer service? How do you build trust with risk-averse restaurant operators?
The first thing is that the particular type of AI agent that we're building needs to be heavily guardrailed because at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're filling a business function, which is taking a guest order at a restaurant, which sounds very simple, but in fact, it can be quite complex. And you need to guard against things like people trying to talk to the system like it's their friend, trying to order a million hamburgers, making cute videos to put up on TikTok. Like that's the enemy of a system like ours. So the system needs to be heavily guardrailed around the items that are on the menu, the ways in which menu items can be modified, and it needs to progress the conversation along a clear track toward completing the order. I would say that's like the number one thing. Number two is that it's really important in our industry to let guests and staff know that an AI system is being used and that the voice recordings or the ordering interactions are being used to train the system. So we have privacy decals that are up in front of like all the drive-throughs we're live in. Anyone that calls our system over the phone, we tell them at the very beginning, this conversation is being recorded for quality and training purposes and for system training in particular. And then, of course, there's just the host of privacy controls and data controls that you have to have in place to ensure that your systems are secure and your customers know that their data isn't going to escape or go anywhere where it shouldn't go.
That's a very different perspective that I have had so far on this show. Many people, many design partners I work with, I've met in my journey with enterprise AI, would perceive governance and compliance a bit of a barrier. I do have my own perspective that this is an actual enabler if you use it right. But your example is very unique and it actually allows me to think a little bit more outside the box because I have not been purposely exposed to this AI use case in particular. But what I heard is like the systems need to be heavily guardrailed. That's basically your honest answer. I really like the example where people will just try to break the AI, right? So your job is not to let the AI run wild if those crazy scenarios happen. You building constraints, defining boundaries, making sure it can't go off script in ways that could damage the brand, right?
That's right.
But at the end of the day, Justin, what I heard, even though it's a very particular use case and you're very focused on this also means that in the enterprise AI, you must, as a leader, just put your guardrails, governance, or compliance, whatever those KPIs are in that space, as a foundation of your
That's
program,
right.
right? That just needs to be part of the design from day one and don't work it backwards. I think that's what stood out for me. And I appreciate that different perspective because it's still going back to the roots of proper AI program design. Thank you, Justin. All right. Looking ahead, one of the questions about the future outlook, where do you see voice AI creating the most tangible impact over the next 12 months? It could be in the restaurant business, it could be in the call center. The floor is yours, honestly, for Justin. Where do you see the future?
Well, I think as has probably been, it's pretty plain and clear at this point. We are a vertical specific business and we're focused on a very specific use case in that one vertical. And we have deliberately been narrow in our focus, both on the problem set that we're working on as well as the industry domain that we're a part of, because we want to be the best in the world at solving this problem. Now, it's not to say in the future we might not be able to take this technology and apply it elsewhere. But for right now, we're very purposefully, intentionally constraining ourselves. Now, if I look more broadly at voice AI, the big win here is in customer service in general. You have players like Poly.ai is a great example of one that are working to solve all sorts of different customer service use cases. There certainly is opportunity to build a very large horizontal customer service business there. It's unclear at this point whether this is going to be a winner takes all or most, or if there's going to be 1,000 startups that'll be in the space. I don't think anyone really knows at this point. But I would say customer service is the one that I would immediately gravitate to. Then there's the consumer side too. We're here talking about enterprise, but just look at the growth of interacting with AI voice agents, through like Google or ChatGPT, right? 6 months ago, I would never use ChatGPT voice. Now I probably use it like 10 times a day.
I concur. I personally love this. My first interaction with that live agent assistant was with Google when they released a 2.5.
Yeah.
That's when I got exposed. A little bit of a personal story. I'm a dad and we read books, a little of bed story.
Mm-hmm.
I went actually on a quest with my 7 years old. And we were chatting to the live agent for 2.5. It was just that's how we called it. And we were basically writing a book together. She was sharing ideas, what she wants to hear next, what's this whole story all about. We ended up with like 36 pages about coins that were changing the world. It went a little bit wild, I'll be honest with you. But with all the revolution happening in that voice space, even being exposed to such a little personal opportunity, that was an amazing experience. And now I'm thinking about taking on another take. As my 7 years old is a little bit older. And I think the new model can bring more of precision to it as well. If you guys are thinking about future AI ideas for your startups, Justin gave us a very good opportunity to solve $1 billion problem. So if you're looking for one, you can use this as a potential guide as well.
Be careful, better be making those books because you can just turn it over to the agent and it'll tell your kid a story. So don't lose your humanity, man.
Gotta put some copywriting on this, right? But the question is, who did write it at the end, right? Was it us or was it actual model? Still great experience. If you haven't tried one of those, I think everyone should, and then let us know if you've done something of that kind as well. Now, let's dive into the deep dive questions. There's only going to be 2 questions. I didn't necessarily tell you about this, Justin, so I appreciate you bearing with me. But what I want to hear, and I'm sure the audience as well, I want to hear a little bit more about your journey as a serial founder. You co-founded LiveClicker, sold it in 2018. Now you're doing it again. What did you learn from LiveClicker that you're applying at Incept?
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's a loaded question. I had a great time at LiveClicker. It was a great experience in my career. And I honestly look back on that time and realize now just how magical that time was. I think the number one lesson is you have to build a team of A players. You cannot have a company that has even one B player in it, because the first time you let a B player in, a C player is going to be next. You let the C player in, a D player is going to be next. And I worked at companies earlier in my career where there were some B players and some that were not even B players. And that's never an experience that I want to have in one of my companies. So that was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is listen to your customers, right? Pay attention to what your customers are telling you. Be smart about aggregating customer feedback to drive product evolution. But at the end of the day, if you lose sight of your customer, you don't know who your customer is, you're not going to be successful in business. And then I think the third lesson was the importance of frugality. So we've raised capital here at Incept AI. All of my other startups have always been bootstrap startups, have never had any outside investment. It is true that necessity is the mother of all invention. And the only way that you can truly learn that as an entrepreneur is when you're starved of capital and you have to just make it happen anyway, right? It's very easy to solve problems when you have money. When you don't have money and you have to solve the same problems, it becomes quite much harder. You have to be creative, you have to be scrappy, you have to think of like little hacks. Um, I'm proud of my little hacky DNA that I have, and I think I bring that to Incept AI. It allows us to punch quite a bit above our pay grade, just at least in terms of our market presence and the reach that we have with customers. So be scrappy, be frugal, listen to your customers, build a great team.
A great team that really resonates with me heavily. We already talked about listening to your customer, which is just such an important framework to bring to any role that we deliver. I love your feedback about getting the investment when you have the momentum as well, right? That's very important. So thank you for sharing that. Speaking of go to market, I'm curious to learn what kills AI products in traditional industries. What are the most common mistakes AI vendors make when trying to crack the market? Obviously, in your opinion.
Okay, so the first thing to know is that no one cares that it's AI. No one cares. People don't care about AI. People care about solving business problems. So, yes, we have AI in our name, but it doesn't matter at all. What matters is solving problems, listening to customers, and helping them make more money, helping them save time, whatever their pain point is. I feel like I've said it like 4 times so far in this interview, but listen to your customers. That's the most important thing. The hype around being an AI company, it's not. No one cares. We're all talking about AI stuff, but like when you're talking to customers, like they don't care. They don't care it's AI. They just care about solving business problems. So that is the biggest mistake, I would say, by far, is thinking that customers care about AI when they actually don't. They care about solving problems. I think another mistake that a lot of AI companies make is communicating with customers that an AI solution will solve problems on day one. I view AI like raising a child, right? You have to feed it, nurture it, take care of it. You have to interact with it. And it's through this process that your child or your AI agent learns and becomes better. So this is really important when working with customers because AI companies need to set customer expectations that you don't just buy an AI solution and on day one, it's going to solve all of your problems. When we go live with a new restaurant, we don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden start taking all of the orders in the restaurant. It would be a total disaster. We first listen to a bunch of orders and we take those orders and we run them through our system and we see where would the system fall down or make mistakes, and we use that to iterate and tweak the system. Then when we start taking orders, we only start taking orders for a couple hours a day, and it's typically not in a busy period because we know when we first launch the system's going to make more errors. We gradually ramp up the hours until finally we're able to go all hours. And once you've done that initial training, you've done it at a few different restaurants, then you can flip the switch and just do it on all of them. But it's definitely like a crawl, walk, run type of thing with us. And it's very important for us when we're working with customers to set their expectations that this is not a solution that's going to solve problems overnight. It does take time.
Thank you, Justin. I love how you simply put it. No one cares about AI.
Yeah.
You wouldn't tell by AI everywhere, obviously, but I totally agree with you, Justin. I have probably spoken to 50, 60 CIOs in the past few months. No one really cares about AI. They care about productivity.
Yep.
They want the business
Yep.
results. As long we can solve their problems, they don't care if it's AI, if it's magic or very well-trained parrot. It doesn't really matter at the end of the
It
day.
doesn't.
Can you drive the results? Can you prove it?
All
That's a
matters in
great
the end.
approach. And it does indeed. And I appreciate this. Well, Justin, this has been incredibly valuable. I think my biggest takeaway is this: building AI that works in the real world, especially in high pressure, noisy, chaotic environments like restaurants, isn't about having the best models. It's about understanding the constraints, building the right guardrails, focusing on the business problem instead of the technology, and having the discipline to say no so you can say yes to the right things. What you've shown us, Justin, is what it takes to go from 83% to 97%. More importantly, what it takes to build a company when you've already seen exactly what doesn't work. And for everyone listening, whether you're deploying AI in restaurants, call centers, or any customer-facing environments, Justin's given us a playbook. Fix the audio quality, let the system learn, focus on naturalness and economics, guardrail heavily, and remember that no one cares about AI. That's the final point here. They care about solving their business problems. Justin, thank you for sharing your lessons learned from your time working in restaurant AI and at LiveClicker. This has been fantastic.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Enterprise AI Unlocked wherever you get your podcasts. Next week, we'll continue exploring how companies are moving from AI experimentation to measurable business impact. I'm Paul Brzezowski from the founding team at Olakai, and I'll see you next time. Cheers. Thanks, Justin.